All right, we are now moving on to pages 40 and 41. We're now on population growth. And again, what I'll do, same thing I did last time, we're trying to find what factors influence population. From earlier in the chapter, we've got climate and arable land. And let's keep on going. Population growth. The population of a place changes due to natural increase and migration. Natural increase is derived from births and deaths. Population increases rapidly in places where more people are born than die, and it declines in places where deaths outnumber births. Geographers most frequently measure population change in a country or the world as a whole by using three measures: natural increase rate, crude birth rate, and crude death rate. The population of a place also increases when people move in and decreases when people move out. This element of population change, migration, is discussed in Chapter 3. So the first section, natural increase. The natural increase rate is the percentage by which a population grows in a year. The term natural means that a country's growth rate excludes migration. During the 21st century, the world NIR, or natural increase rate, has been 1.2, meaning that the population of the world has been growing each year by 1.2%. The world NIR is lower today than its all-time peak of 2.2% in 1963, and it has declined since the 1990s. However, the NIR during the second half of the 20th century was high by historical standards. Most of humanity's several 100,000-year occupancy of Earth was characterized by an NIR of essentially zero, and Earth's population was unchanged at perhaps 500,000. About 75 million people are being added to the population of the world annually. This number represents a decline from the historic high of 88 million in 1989. The number of people added each year has dropped much more slowly than the NIR because the population base is much larger now than in the past. World population increased from 3 to 4 billion in 14 years, from 4 to 5 billion in 13 years, from 5 to 6 billion in 12 years, and from 6 to 7 billion in 12 years. As the base continues to grow in the 21st century, a change of only 0.1% can produce very large swings in population growth. The rate of natural increase affects the doubling time, which is again another bold word here. Doubling time is the number of years needed to double a population, assuming a constant rate of natural increase. At the early 21st century rate of 1.2% per year, world population would double in about 54 years. If the same NIR continued through the 21st century, global population in the year 2100 would reach 24 billion. When the NIR was 2.2% in 1963, doubling time was 35 years. Had the 2.2% rate continued into the 21st century, Earth's population would currently exceed 10 billion instead of 7 billion. A 2.2% NIR through the 21st century would produce a total population of more than 50 billion in 2100. More than 95% of the natural increase is clustered in developing countries. The NIR exceeds 2.2% in most countries of sub-Saharan Africa, whereas it is negative in Europe, meaning that in the absence of immigrants, population actually is declining. Since 1980, 67% of the world's population growth has been in Asia, 20% in Africa, 9% in Latin America, and 4% in North America. Europe, including Russia, has had declining population since 1980. Regional differences in NIRs mean that most of the world's additional people live in the countries that are least able to maintain them. Fertility. The crude birth rate, CBR, is the total number of live births in a year for every 1,000 people alive in the society. A CBR of 20 means that for every 1,000 people in a country, 20 babies are born over a 1-year period. The world map of CBRs mirrors the distribution of NIRs. As is the case with NIRs, the highest CBRs are in sub-Saharan Africa and the lowest are in Europe. Many sub-Saharan African countries have a CBR over 40, whereas many European countries have a CBR below 10. Mortality. The crude death rate is the total number of deaths in a year for every 1,000 people alive in the society. Comparable to the CBR, the CDR is expressed as the annual number of deaths per 1,000 population. The CDR does not follow the same regional pattern as the NIR and CBR, figure 2.36. The combined CDR for all developing countries is actually lower than the combined rate for all developing countries. Furthermore, the variation between the world's highest and lowest CDRs is much less extreme than in the variation in CBRs. The highest CDR in the world is 17 per 1,000 and the lowest is 1, a difference of 16, whereas CBRs for individual countries range from 7 per 1,000 to 52, a spread of 45. Why does Denmark, one of the world's wealthiest countries, have around the same CDR as the Gambia, one of the poorest? Why does the United States, with its extensive system of hospitals and physicians, have a higher CDR than Mexico and nearly every country in Latin America? The answer is that the populations of different countries are at various stages in an important process known as the demographic transition, discussed on the next page. Okay, so if we're trying to find factors influencing population, quite simply, there's a couple of things that are mentioned here, and if you just write them down, you can write down NIR. NIR, according to your book, is the percentage by which a population grows in a year. So what you're taking is you've got the total number of people born and the total number of people dying, and if you take those two numbers, obviously the people are born, they add to the population, the people that die decrease the population, so after those two you get your NIR, your natural increase rate. Another factor that your book talks about is CBR. And I'm going to go ahead and write CDR up there as well. CBR stands for crude birth rate, and that's the total number of live births in a year for every 1,000 people. And CDR is the exact opposite. It's the total number of deaths in a year for every 1,000 people alive. So there are a lot of factors that cause both of these to either go up or go down, but they obviously have just a general influence in population. So with that being said, I've just read pages 40 and 41. It talks about population growth, and we've got a couple of factors here. The natural increase rate influences a population. How many people are born and how many people are dying per 1,000 people obviously have an impact on the total number of people in a given area, so population. So with that being said, that was population growth.